I'm Rachel Madel from Talking with Tech.
And I'm Chris Bouguet from Talking with Tech.
We have a podcast dedicated to augmentative and alternative communication, all things related to helping kids with complex communication needs.
If you have a passion for helping people with language disabilities, this is the show for you. Each episode features an interview or a roundtable discussion on a topic related to augmentative communication and helping people with language disabilities.
And we're really passionate about giving practical strategies to clinicians working in the field who are working with children or adults, anything related to AAC.
So you can look us up on iTunes, or you can find us on Facebook. We got a group over there, or check out our website at bit.ly/TWT podcast.
Please join our community of professionals that are working to ensure that everyone can say whatever they want to say, however they want to say it.
Please listen carefully.
What is communication?
An essential behavior of life. We have the both blessing and responsibility of trying to foster another.
It's the strongest way for two people to convey information to each other.
Communication is a lifeline.
It's just connection with other people.
Connecting people in terms of ideas, thoughts, or needs.
Draws us out of ourselves, draws us into that relationship, builds up our families. Without it, we'd be lost.
Whatever it is that we do to express intent and achieve an impact.
Communication is the ability to express your needs, wants, frustrations, and desires to anyone that you feel needs to have that information.
Welcome to Speech Science, episode number 86. We are proud members of the Exceptional Podcast Network. I'm Matt Hott here in Cincinnati, and we just learned the airport code for Louisville is SDF with Michelle Wintering.
How's it going, Matt?
And then Michael McLeod out in Philadelphia. Do we know your airport code?
PHL.
Is it really?
PHX.
It is PHL. Wow.
His makes sense.
Mine is CVG.
Okay.
I don't know why. Cincinnati something. Oh, it's another wonderful day.
Even though it's really in Kentucky.
Science.
I just had to throw it out there.
It is. It's in northern Kentucky. We want to know what your airport codes are. Head over to our website. This is where we get to interact with you, speechsciencepodcast.com. Give us a phone call or a text message, 614-681-1798, or email us, speechsciencepodcast@gmail.com, or interact with Michael and Michelle on the social media Instagram, hashtag SSPod. Guys, I've had such a weird, interesting last week and a half. I've quit a job, officially, turned in my laptop. I've gone to orientation training where I fell in love with my new job. Might be changing parishes for something other than if you Google Cincinnati, you'll figure that out. And then guess what I did an hour and a half before tonight's podcast?
Played with the action figures in your room there.
No, but they are close to the monitor. Michael, what's your guess?
I was going to guess playing with action figures also.
Yeah, no. So ASHA is in Orlando, and the ASHA made the announcement a couple weeks ago that closing party is at Universal Studios. I believe it's $60 for a 4-hour pass with unlimited ride access to the front of the lines. And instead of doing that, I just booked reservations to build a lightsaber at Galaxy's Edge in Batuu at Star Wars Land at Hollywood Studios, and booked droid making as well. So while you guys are enjoying Hogwarts and other Universal Studios things, I will be drinking blue milk, making a lightsaber, and connecting with Yoda through the Force.
So basically we were right.
Pretty much.
The droid is not an action figure. It is a highly detailed robot that is my translator in Galaxy's Edge.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. See, you got R2, but my R2 will move and roll on its own and talk to the other robots.
This one too.
Oh, well, okay. Whatever.
Do you get CEUs for that?
Well,
for building a droid?
For our listeners,
no, unfortunately.
I did not build the R2-D2 that I'm holding. I just purchased it for my husband.
You are a wonderful wife, as you should. Michael, we'll start with you in Philadelphia. Besides how awesome my week, how awesome has your week been?
It's been a great week. I've met a bunch of new clients this week, new families, some other professionals, some other speech pathologists and other clinicians from other from various different schools at different events. So yeah, it's been a really nice week. Summer's kind of winding down and schools are starting to prep. So it's been good kind of traveling around the area and meeting some new people.
That is awesome. Michelle, wintering down in beautiful the Bluegrass State, what's been going on with you this week?
Well, work-wise, building my caseload. So doing a lot of, I think you muted me and then unmuted me. Sorry.
I did. I'm sorry. I meant to mute myself.
All right.
I hit the wrong button.
I'll start over. Work-wise, I am building my caseload at the new job, which means doing a lot of evaluations and meeting families. I kind of love doing diagnostics when I get to meet new families and figure out, what we're going to be working on and what we can build on. And hanging out with James, my son, baby speech science, and trying to enjoy some last pool days of the summer when we can.
Oh, that is the first time that we heard his name on air.
It's not, because the last time I said it, you said the same thing.
Oh, really?
Yep.
I remembered.
Oh, well. Hi, James.
Yeah, he's sleeping, hopefully.
Oh, yeah. My 2.5-year-old Andrew should be sleeping as well, but we know how that works out in speech therapy land. Coming up on today's show, I'm excited because I've got the bumper sticker, the car magnet sitting on my microphone. I got to sit down and interview the author of Sloths Are Slow, so that'll be our interview today. But we figured we'd kick it off with a couple interesting articles. We're going to talk about what does Delta do for multiple language people. We have a research article from the Journal of Speech, Language, and Hearing Research about how to improve reading comprehension in the primary grades, and a amazing story about a voice box reconstruction. But I thought we'd start off with a T-ball article. This is coming from the timesonline.com. The House passes the Doyle bill, which is authorizing $1 billion in autism funding. Doyle is a Democrat from Forest Hills, and this is something that should be a T-ball funding issue, right?
That it should be easy, is what you're saying.
Right. That's what I was saying by T-ball.
I mean, yeah, I'm glad that autism is getting the media attention that it is. I hope we see that for more and more things. So it's not, I guess, not just autism, right? We need funding for special education in general.
Yeah, and not only is it funding, it's funding, which is great, but it's not typically you see funding from these philanthropists and billionaires kind of donating to these causes. But this is a bill. This is something that politicians are doing. So the fact that that they're willing to do this and use money towards this type of research, from the government is huge. So hats off to these guys. Doyle out in Allegheny County. I believe this is a joint bill between PA and New Jersey, I believe.
Yep. U.S. Representative Chris Smith from New Jersey, Republican.
So there you go. This is exactly what we want and exactly what is needed. More funding, more research, so we can get some answers.
So now I believe this will go over to the Senate to get approved over there in the graveyard of policies with Mitch McConnell. But this is a reauthorization of the Autism Cares Act from 2014. It means $1 billion in funding over 5 years for the National Institutes of Health, the CDC, and the Health Resources and Service Administration. And it was supported by Autism Speaks, Autism Society of America, and the Association of University Centers on Disabilities, and the American Academy of Pediatrics.
And I like that Doyle said, these programs have done a great deal. This is a quote. These programs have done a great deal to improve the lives of individuals with autism, but there is still much more that needs to be done, and that this bill would help address some of the gaps that remain. So there you go.
Exactly. And a lot of the funding from this bill will also go towards interventions and helping families and funding autism care professionals. So, of course, that means speech language pathologists. So obviously, a lot of the money of autism research goes towards learning more about causes and different areas, different things we can do to possibly prevent it or learn about it. but a lot of the funding will also go towards interventions, and that's really seems to be the where a lot of the funding is going, to see what can be done once the diagnosis comes around, and speech pathology is always core to that team. So once you get that diagnosis of autism, then you need to instantly start talking about speech therapy.
I would love to see more research into the cause, so then that way we can eliminate some of the misnomers that are out there. I'd also like to see ASHA step up and help push for some more funding in this area or in other areas. I love reading that we get bills passed, but I would love to read where we are pushing for stuff. And maybe this is where I reach out to Craig Coleman, the incoming VP for that sort of stuff, and in the future he'll school us all on what ASHA is or isn't doing.
Mm-hmm. And this is where you keep advocating to your state, right, Matt?
Yeah, I'm working on something that I can't really go into great details on, but hopefully if everything works out well, we'll be making a big change at the state level, not just related to autism, but also at the speech and school-based SLP level as well.
One thing I was thinking about,
vague but true, guys.
Yeah. One thing I was thinking about, this is kind of random, but I would love to see some kind of research done on individuals with autism and kind of like their peripheral vision. Like I have so many. Well, I don't want to say I have so many, but I would say the majority of clients that I see with autism always seem to be kind of poking themselves in the sides of their eyes or looking off to like the side. There's always some sort of stimulation they get with like their peripheral vision. So that seems to be something that I'm like, because it is a spectrum disorder. Everyone is their own unique individual, and you rarely see a lot of common symptoms. But that's something I continue to see pass up, and I would love to hear what you guys have experienced or other SLPs listeners hearing that, if they've ever noticed something with kind of the peripheral vision.
I kind of want to reach out to some of my friends who work with the blind too, because I know that is always when I was working at the Colorado School for the Deaf and the Blind, it was a concern with diagnosing a kid with autism because there are some vision diagnoses that, especially in young children, can present with similar symptoms that might be red flagged as autism-like symptoms, but are not, because it has to do with their vision diagnosis. So that's just interesting that you're seeing this parallel with vision. So they have to weed it out to see, is it really autism or is it the vision?
Of course.
Yeah.
Yep.
This feels like a Dr. Meredith Harold question.
That would be hopefully she listens to the episode. I would love to hear her thoughts.
Dr. Meredith Harold she is the informed SLP. They just had a really cool sale last week, and I'm kicking myself because I went to sign up about an hour after it expired. But what she does is she looks at research and breaks down research into easy to understand language. So maybe she would be the one to help us. You know what? I'm going to email her right during the break and find out if she knows anything about that.
Sounds good to me.
That's a great idea.
Thanks, Matt.
Way to go, Matt.
And if you have interest or input on what Michael said, make sure you reach out to us, speechsciencepodcast.com. You can email us speechsciencepodcast@gmail.com and give us a phone call, 614-681-1798. Or if you like Michelle and Michael, find them on the Twitter, not the Twitter sphere, the Instagram sphere, SSPod.
#SSPod. Speech_science is our username.
See, I sometimes pay attention to that.
That's all right. I try to remember your spiel too. It doesn't always work.
Yeah, it doesn't work that way. So, super cool story coming out of CNN. A 2-year-old boy born without a larynx or an airway is the recipient of a historic voice box reconstruction. That's what they're saying on the title of the article. This is down in Memphis, Tennessee, performed the procedure back in February, and it looks like he's doing pretty well.
Can we find his SLP? I want to talk to him or her.
Since birth, he's had a tracheostomy, a hole in his throat for breathing, and this is so cool, guys. This is why I've said before, and in no disrespect to anything, but if we are on the forefront for disabilities, this is an area, the time frame, that if you have a disability, you may not have a disability in the next couple of years. This kind of stuff is just so cool to read about.
This kid is absolutely adorable, by the way.
Yes, adorable. And how, just amazing what he's been through for this procedure and everything.
His name is Cooper. Back in May, he made a sound for the first time in his life. Michael, I know you don't have kids, but Michelle, do you remember the first time you heard baby speech science?
Oh, his first cry? Heck yeah.
Yeah, and I remember both Michael and Andrew's first cry, not yours, Michael, but my Michael.
Well, and my little guy had his cord wrap, so it was delayed, and we were like, first sound was important.
You remember my first cry?
I do.
You do.
But imagine that, Michelle, you said you had a moment wait. Imagine that wait for 2 years to hear their first sound. That is just so cool. Mm-hmm. They said they've been waiting since day of birth for the surgery to happen. They built Cooper's voice box using 2 of his ribs. That is so crazy, guys.
Yeah, and he's going to continue to see surgeons every 2 weeks for more procedures to mold his new airway. Did you see that?
Well, that makes sense. And this is kind of where, I don't want to say it's like a designer voice, but this is where when working with a voice speech pathologist, you've got to really understand how the vocal folds expand, and you want to make sure that he gets the right little kid voice and then the right middle school voice and then eventually the right man voice. This is going to be something that I could see him working with a speech path for years.
Mm-hmm. How do we find this speech pathologist and obviously the family before we can talk to them? But I just feel like this is such a unique case that there have got to be, especially the speech therapist whose voice is their specialty and working with kids with trachs. This is the cutting edge of our science with it, right? Like how neat would that be to be hands-on and see this little boy going through this?
Well, and then this also opens up the door. How does this change what we do from a therapy standpoint, knowing that this is an option in the future, that we can rebuild a voice box? How many times have we had a cancer patient I keep calling it a voice box because that's the title staring at me in my face. But how many times have we removed the thyroid? How many times have we removed that whole larynx for a cancer patient or damage or trauma? And now we have seen that something can be rebuilt.
I mean, this stuff is neat to see because we're hopefully, if this continues to go well for this little boy or with other cases, then it down the road, probably far down the road right now, can become more common. And then we're looking at that's a structural type change. So they're going to need therapy before, during, and after that surgery.
I muted myself. I'm sorry. I just pulled up I'm going to share it with you guys here, and we're going to do some fancy editing so everyone can hear this.
Okay.
Here's little Cooper breathing and making a sound for the first time. Have you guys heard this one yet?
Nope.
Not yet.
And Michelle, did you ask me a question that I didn't answer, Michelle?
No.
Okay, good. Can you guys see this?
Yep.
For a family fearing the worst, this is the sound of a miracle. 2-year-old Cooper Kilburn blowing up a toy without the help of a machine. It seems so simple, but doctors weren't sure he'd ever do it. Cooper's mom and dad, Brooke and Brad, got into a bad car accident when she was 16 weeks pregnant with him.
We totaled our vehicle.
An ultrasound from her doctor in Adamsville, Tennessee, revealed something was wrong with Cooper's airway. But her doctor wasn't sure what it was and sure didn't know how to fix it. So they came to Le Bonheur here in Memphis.
It became very apparent that there was no recognizable larynx.
No way for their baby boy to talk or breathe. It's a rare condition that's usually fatal because it's so hard to diagnose. But Dr. Jerome Thompson caught it because he's trained for it.
That allowed me to have an idea of what I was going to be dealing with.
Dr. Thompson and his team performed a C-section. They left the umbilical cord attached. Tiny Cooper still tethered to his mom with a tube in his neck.
There was equipment on every side of the bed.
They implanted a tube in his throat, known as a trach. With that device and the help of a ventilator, Cooper would be able to breathe, but he still wouldn't have a voice, and he was still at risk.
8 out of every 100 children who are totally trach dependent die.
That's why 2 years later, Dr. Thompson performed another surgery. Using parts of Cooper's own ribs, the surgeon sculpted a voice box. The first time a procedure like that had ever been done.
We snatched victory from the jaws of defeat.
The new airway means this little 2-year-old can eventually learn to talk and breathe without a ventilator. And right now, he only needs that at night.
He should have a normal, active life.
His parents forever grateful.
It teaches you perseverance.
One day, Cooper's going to be telling this, and we're not going to have to.
Dr. Thompson says Cooper will always have the trach, but he'll be able to do most things, even play sports if he wants. Live in the medical district, Andrew Ellison, WRIG News, Channel 2.
Whoa!
That is amazing.
Unbelievable.
I didn't know any of that story.
Those guys are absolute geniuses. Those doctors, unbelievable.
And they put that trach in him while he was still attached to his mom, like still attached to the umbilical cord. That's
crazy.
That's incredible.
Crazy.
I'm going to leave as much of that into the show as I can, and then the rest of that will be linked down below so that we don't break any copyright.
I'm just like, wow, that is so cool.
That doctor talked about it like it was no big deal. That's insane.
Just a quick recap in case we aren't able to play the whole 2 minutes and you have to find the link and you're driving. Basically, the mom was involved in an accident when she was 16 weeks pregnant. They did an ultrasound on the baby, found out that he didn't have a larynx, contacted the children's hospital. Baby was born via C-section. As Michelle said, they left the umbilical cord attached to the baby and to the mom, put a trachea in. The doctor knew 2 years later he was going to build the larynx out of the boy's ribs and said the boy's going to live a normal life and only needs, a ventilator at night and could play sports when he gets older.
And look at that though. She had a car accident which caused the extra ultrasounds, which is why they caught this in utero. Wow, what a miracle. I mean, that last line of the article is so true that he's a miracle. There's no other way to put it. That's incredible.
Amazing.
That took a turn that I was not expecting. I thought it was just going to be here's how they did it. Oh my gosh. Let's take a break. We want to hear from you. Head over to our website, speechsciencepodcast.com. Email us, speechsciencepodcast@gmail.com, or give us a phone call in Columbus, 614-681-1798. Coming up after the break, I got an opportunity to sit down with Kim Marino, author of Sloths Are Slow, an interactive children's book. It is the favorite of the 2.5-year-old in my house. You're listening to Speech Science.
Do you have an idea for a product or book? Or are you ready to go beyond in-service presentations? Well, how do you get started? And what if you don't have any business experience at all? Well, I have some great news for you. I'm Mei-Ling Chan, and I'm getting the nitty-gritty stories from parents, teachers, therapists, advocates, and people with disabilities who have created successful businesses, and they're sharing their intimate stories with you. Listen to us on the Exceptional Leaders Podcast and fast-track creating and building and sharing your idea with the world so that you can help more people.
Welcome back to Speech Science. I'm Matt Hott. Today we are joined by the author of Sloths Are Slow, Kimberly Marino, a speech and language pathologist. Kim, thank you so much for sitting down with us today.
You're welcome. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
So, Kim, I have to ask, before we get into the book, you're a speech and language pathologist. Where do you serve and what population do you serve?
Sure. So I live on Long Island. I live in Miller Place, actually, which is on the North Shore of Long Island. And this is my 25th year of work. And I primarily work with kids from birth to 3, addressing feeding concerns.
Oh.
But I do have a few older kids on my caseload. So I have some kids in the 3 to 5 range, and then the one little girl who I work with who is 8 years old. But I primarily work with the little BBs, and I'll get them like if they were diagnosed with Down syndrome, I'll get them like right after birth. Suffolk, the county that I live in, is great about giving services. So if you're born with Down syndrome or a cleft palate, as soon as you come home from the hospital, early intervention starts.
Oh, wow.
So it's really cool that Suffolk County gives great services for kids in need. So, but as I said, I primarily focus on feeding. So I do, I see kids on the autism spectrum who have feeding issues, sensory issues. And that's kind of been my forte, along with kids who are born with cleft palates.
I give you all the credit in the world. I did a tour of duty in the preschool, and that's how I have to label it. I learned very quickly that I am not a preschool SLP. I work in the high schools, middle schools, and with adults. So
okay,
I give you credit. Like,
well, thank you very much. Well, I guess we all figure out where we belong and where we have the most to offer, right?
Oh, that's for sure. That's for sure. So you're an SLP. You work with a pretty high risk population. Then you decided all of a sudden you're going to write this wonderful book, Sloths Are Slow. I say wonderful because my 2-year-old is super picky, and he loved that book from beginning to end, and he still does. Where did you find the time to even I'm going to write a book, and then why sloths?
So it's kind of been something I was working on, I would say, for at least 2 years. I have 4 kids, and my daughter, Katie, who's 16 now, she loves all animals and creatures, but specifically really loves sloths. And one day I was going through my work stuff, like my books, and I was kind of organizing things, and I was reading the book, all right, I'm not going to remember. There's a monster at the end of this book, that Sesame Street book with Grover. Yeah. And he doesn't want you to turn the page. And I was like, I love the interactive feature of that book. And I was like, there really aren't many books out there where you actually interact with the book. And I was like, I should write one. And then I thought about the sloth. I said, I'm going to write one about a sloth, since my daughter's name is Katie, since she really likes sloths. And it kind of just stemmed from there. And I hired an illustrator, and then I hired a graphic designer, and we kind of put it all together. The big piece for me, though, is the fact that I give, and you'll see it in the book, that I give a portion back to Gigi's Playhouse. I don't know if you've heard of Gigi's Playhouse. They are all over the United States. It's an achievement center for individuals with Down syndrome. So they're starting a chapter on Long Island, I believe in Patchogue, which is on the south shore of Long Island. And I've connected with the women on the board there who are trying to start. Well, it will open up in the spring of 2020. But so a portion of my proceeds goes directly to that Playhouse on Long Island to help them start up their organization. So I've always been about giving back. So I'm excited about the book, of course, just because I'm excited about the book, but I'm also excited to help this organization. So that's a little bit of the background regarding Sloths Are Slow.
I love it. And did you purposely, when you sat down to write it, I noticed when I was reading when I was watching my wife read it with my son, that it almost works kind of like a screener book for some of the younger kids. Did you purposely sit down and say, I want to attack these SLP like goals? Or was it, I just want to create an interactive book and such?
I mean, the goal was for it to be an interactive book, but then of course, being an SLP, I decided now, so my sister, Allie, she's an occupational therapist, and I have a sister, Jen, she's a special ed teacher. So I thought about all the pieces of, let's say, cognition and fine motor and gross motor, and and speech, of course, and how to tap into all of the areas to make it fun and interactive, but also stimulating, the various areas of development. So it was a comment. I did think about that, though, when I was writing it. Yes.
Like I said, I had my wife read it to my son, and I've kind of read through it with my kids, and I was just amazed at how much my son was willing to participate in the book. Because sometimes we have some of those books, and I'm like, buddy, touch the fur or the rough sandpaper, and he's like, no. But this one,
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, he bought into it 100%. I love the artwork. It is such a mixture of like a high-end cartoon and more like a, how do I say this? Like a kind of like, it reminds me of Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, where it's just a unique look.
Cool, thank you. So I found the artist on this website called 5RR. And you can go on there and you can find illustrators, somebody who's going to maybe write you a jingle, etc. So I wanted to include more information about her in the book because she just did such a fabulous job. But she only wanted her name on the book, and she didn't want any other information in reference to her in the book. So yeah, but she did a great job, and she was so excellent to coordinate with. As I said, it took us about 2 years to finish the whole the book, but she really worked very hard on it, and I love Lento. I mean, she did such a great job creating him. And some people wondered why I named him Lento. So I guess not everybody knows. I mean, I don't speak Spanish fluently, but I knew that Lento meant slow in Spanish. So
oh, does it really?
Yeah. So that's why I named him Lento. So.
I love that. I did not know that at all.
Okay, cool.
So how much research did you have to do for Sloths? Because I mean, when we connected through one of the Facebook groups, when you said, oh, do you want to read the book before we talk on air? And I'm like, oh yeah, that's fine. And like in my brain, I'm going, okay, what do I know about sloths? They're slow. And they eat bugs, maybe? Like that was the only thing I knew. How much did you have to go into just reading about sloths to create this book?
You know, honestly, a lot of the information in the book I got from my daughter because she'll watch anything on television that has to do with any sort of an animal, and she was very interested in sloths, as I said. So I got a lot of information from her, and then of course just did my own research to make sure, like the fact that the sloth poops once a week, that actually is a true fact. So sloths like to eat leaves, and this story is about the three-toed sloth. There's also a two-toed sloth. I guess I could write a story about that, the two-toed sloth. And they have some habits that are different, and I don't remember anymore because I didn't do any research on the two-toed sloth. But and they actually swim faster in water than they move on land. That's the true fact also.
Do they really?
And, yeah. They're actually, it's more dangerous for them to crawl on land because they are so slow, so that they're at risk of a predator getting them. So, yeah. But, so yes, I did a bit of research just to make sure, because I wanted the story to be interactive. I wanted it to be stimulating in reference to cognition, fine motor, and gross motor. But I also wanted it to be factual, so the listener was definitely learning something while hearing the story.
Did you ever think that when you were going through school to become an SLP, that at one point in your life you would be writing about sloth poop in a children's book?
No, I never did think that at all. The poop page happens to be, of course, the kids, because kids like to hear anything about poops or farts or anything like that. So that's always the best page for the kids.
My 6-year-old was kind of into the book. Like he was like in and out. And then when the poop page came up, he loved it completely. And I'm like, of course he does. That's the page he would get on. Now, of course, for any SLPs that are out there that are like, oh man, I wish I could write a book. What was that process like? Just start from the very beginning to getting it published. Was it easy? Did you have to reach out to somebody, or?
You know what? The graphic designer / editor, I guess I would call her. Her name is Diana Girolando, which she actually happens to be my sister-in-law. She was key for me because I wrote the book. I hired the illustrator, so she was able to obviously illustrate the pictures. But my sister-in-law Diana then was able to take the text and the pictures and put it all together. And I don't know how she did it, and was able to follow obviously all of the guidelines that Amazon has, because I published it through Amazon on KDP. So I think I would have probably been stuck there if it wasn't for her, because it's definitely confusing in reference to how you format the book, the edges of the book and how they look, which stuff that I couldn't speak to because it would be too confusing to me. So I feel like it was easy for me in the sense that she was such a good resource, and I'm so glad that she was part of the team to help, bring Lento to life. So, I think if you obviously hire a good illustrator and then help you with you need to find that next person, and it could be my sister-in-law Diana Gerlando, who I do make reference to, I think, in the back of the book, just thanking her, because really without her it would not have happened.
Well, the book is pretty awesome, and if anyone wants to pick it up, they can find it only on Amazon, or where else?
That's correct, only on Amazon at this point.
Any future ideas of mass printing or anything?
I don't know. I mean, I'm really having fun. I'm having fun with it right now. So between, I work full time. I'm married. I have 4 kids, and it's been exciting just to watch people enjoy it, and it's been fun giving back to Gigi's, as I said. So wherever it takes me, it takes me. And I also want to say that I know we talked about this a little bit. That the book itself was written in memory of Thomas Scully. I never met Thomas. I became very friendly with his mom after he passed away. So I always tell her that I never met him and I'll never forget him. And she and her family really strive to keep his memory alive. So our community, the Miller Place community, has been really wonderful about keeping his memory alive and talking about him and letting Debbie, his mom, and the family know that he's somebody that will never be forgotten. So I'm happy also that the book was written in his memory.
That is awesome. And you can find more information over at, is it thomasscullyfoundation.org?
That is correct. Yes, absolutely.
Perfect. We will have a link for that in our show notes as well. Before we let you go, because you've been so gracious with your time, is there anything we didn't get to cover or anything that you want to promote, websites, anywhere to find any more information?
Let's just make sure also if you could put somewhere that you have a link there to Gigi's Playhouse, .org/Long Island. And could I just say a few more things about Gigi's and because it's such a great organization and I'm excited to be connected with it.
Go for it.
Sure. Thank you. Gigi's, as I said, is an achievement center, and Gigi's provides free, purposeful, and therapeutic programs to enhance the lives of people with Down syndrome. So people to become part of Gigi's Playhouse will have available to them lots of programs that are completely free. What makes it so incredible is that it is run by volunteers. So once Gigi's is up and running here on Long Island, the people who will run it are volunteers trying to help spread, the message that just because you have Down syndrome doesn't mean that you're not capable of doing everything else that that anybody else can. They're going to have social classes, cooking classes, support groups for families, literacy programs, yoga, speech and language programs, and like so many more things. So it's pretty awesome.
That is pretty cool. That is awesome. So a good book that helps a good organization, that's always a good thing.
Sure. Yep. Thank you. I agree.
Well, Kim, thank you so much for sitting down with us today.
Sounds great. Thank you so much for having me. Have a great night.
You too. Welcome back to Speech Science. I'm Matt Hott, joined around the Midwest by Michelle Wintering.
Hi, Matt.
Hi, Michelle. And out in PA, Michael McLeod.
What's up, buddy?
Hi, Michael. How are your Phillies? No, how are your Mets doing?
Yankees.
Yankees? How are your Yankees doing?
They're doing great. They're in first place, running away with it.
Dude, the reason why I wanted to bring up a New York thing is I was going to try to transition anyway into, I just found out that Jennifer Lopez and Alex Rodriguez are a couple.
Yes, they are for quite some time now.
Right? I was going to say, how's your Mets? Did you know that a Yankee guy? I know. That's what my wife said. I'm sorry.
Old news. Don't they have like a joint nickname too of some sort?
ALO?
Probably.
J-Rod? Oh, probably J-Rod.
Something.
That makes sense.
I could see that.
Coming up in a moment, we're going to talk a little bit about Delta Airlines, and actually in a good light. But first, this is an article coming out of the Journal of Speech, Language, and Hearing Research. It looks at improving reading comprehension in the primary grades, its mediated effects of language-focused classroom intervention. This is very similar to what we talked about last week about how to improve vocabulary.
Yeah. I mean, you're looking at the study that the conclusions where they found that basically provided evidence that language-focused intervention positively impacts students' performance on language measures, and it's aligned with the intervention and with indirect large effects on distal reading comprehension measures. This is a lot of words. Theoretically, this study provides... Wow, Matt. I lost that part there.
Welcome to my world when I try to abbreviate everything.
Yep.
Basically, the more language we can teach, the better the reading comprehension becomes. And, Michael, I'm sorry.
So, Matt, in the schools that you've worked at, who handles a lot of the literacy work?
I think it depends. I mean, so if we have a student that has reading comprehension as a goal that's been identified through the ETR, they will have a intervention specialist work with them, or a special ed teacher, and they will work on reading and trying to get them, to more of a fluency level. If it's a language part of it, I will also work with them, and then I will give them different articles around their reading level, trying to build that world knowledge base that we've talked about.
So is it SLPs doing the reading comprehension intervention? It's
kind of a battle in in my old district.
Yeah, I think that's kind of how it is at most districts now. I think there's a lot of quote unquote reading specialists, and there's a lot of special educators doing this this reading intervention. But I really feel like SLPs should be more involved, if not completely running the entire show. But of course, there's a lot of bureaucracy and a lot of caseload caps and a lot of issues in terms of putting more on the SLP's plate. But with all of our intense knowledge and training in terms of literacy and reading comprehension and phonological awareness, I really feel like this should really be more and more under our umbrella and our umbrella only. But of course, I'm biased.
Well, and now you're making me want to find a literacy reading education specialist to interview, because I want to know more, because I know some of them have master's degree and reading and literacy specialist certificates. So I don't know if that's across the board at all school districts, like what is required to be a reading and literacy specialist.
I'm moving to a new school district, so anything I say is based off of previous history and does not impact or reflect the behaviors or thoughts or anything of my current school district. But in the past, the way it broke down was if it was more of a phonological issue, and I'm at the high school, if it was an issue of being able to read, not like a reading fluency, that would be more of the intervention specialist or the reading specialist. If it was an inability to understand what was being presented, and inability to identify characters or main ideas, that was going to be on me, if that makes sense.
It does.
So we tried to split it up so that way we both weren't hitting the same thing and we could both work together. And I took that idea of being able to break down the written word by the language because that was my more expertise, and the teacher was able to teach better fluency skills because that was her expertise. Going to a new district, I have no idea how that's going to work.
Mm-hmm. And I know when I was at the school in Colorado, it was a little bit unique just because we had an ASL teacher, for example, for the students who were deaf, because you're dealing with the dual language piece, who then she often worked with reading, but then there was a reading specialist position, and then we as speech pathologists advocated for our role in that too. For the kids with reading and writing.
But you know what, though? I like it. I like the article. I like the journal because it says, guess what? Teach more language, improve reading comprehension. That's something we've been saying all along. And it goes back to something, Michael, you and I have talked about in the past, where instead of working directly on that, if they're reading Romeo and Juliet, you give them other real-world examples that are similar to Romeo and Juliet to help them build the understanding of what's happening in that book, for example.
Yeah, well, and another shout out for Ohio, Matt. This is from Ohio State, I believe. Look at that.
We're just awesome. We want to hear from you. Head over to our website, speechsciencepodcast.com, and email us speechsciencepodcast@gmail.com. or give us a phone call 614-681-1798. I thought we'd end on a happy note today, and this, Michelle, you sent it over. They have little badges underneath their Delta has a little badge that says I speak French or Portuguese or English. Now they're adding American Sign Language.
And it looks like I think they're adding American Sign Language, or if there's a flight attendant or staff member who knows another sign language, like French Sign Language.
Ah, fair enough.
So pretty cool.
I just think it's kind of cool. I think it's cool. Inclusion.
I love it. I think it's fantastic. And the fact that why not let someone who's in a job that might not necessarily use that second language of theirs to kind of show that off, and hopefully because of it have opportunities to utilize it.
Michael,
whatever happened to those gloves that turned sign language into speech? Remember that?
I think those were a hoax, I thought.
Were they really?
Really?
That needs to become real.
Aw. I remember hearing that too, but I never looked into it further.
Why would someone make that a hoax? That's the dumbest thing ever.
Let's see. Oh, wait, maybe not. Maybe this is a real thing?
I thought it was a real thing.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it is a real thing.
You had me worried there, man.
Yeah, okay, so some of it doesn't work. That's what it is. They haven't perfected it yet. Well, obviously that makes sense.
Yeah, but if that's ever able to be perfected and become usable, that would be life-changing.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be huge. That would be absolutely huge.
Hey, I'm just all for making it so that our students that we work with, as they get older, they don't feel like a third wheel. They just feel like it's a thing. Like, oh, I use sign language. Oh, I have autism. And did you see that video where the principal asked everyone to be quiet so the kid with autism could walk up on stage, get his diploma, and get off stage, and everyone kind of either did the sign language clap or the golf clap. So the kid didn't have a moment, a negative moment. He was able to have his positive moment and
get his diploma
stuff
on the stage. That's pretty cool.
Yep.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Guys, let's leave on a good note before we find any bad news about anything else. Let's send this puppy home. Michael McLeod, next week, what are you doing?
Pretty much just continuing to network in the community, do a lot of outreach with some different schools and pediatricians and different professionals. Lots of evals as IEP season's coming up, getting ready for the school year. So I'll be doing a lot of traveling to different schools. Just really, we're pretty much in the home stretch of summer here.
I know, that's terrible. I don't want it to end. Michelle, what are you doing as summer ends?
We have both sets of grandparents, my son's grandparents.
Aww.
So my in-laws and my parents coming in this weekend. It'll be a busy but fun weekend.
Oh, it's like Meet the Fockers Part 2.
Yeah, they've met, so it's all good.
I know, but it could be fun. There's a cat that flushes the toilet.
If only my cat flushed
ensues.
the toilet. But the baby does know some signs, so there you go.
For me, my summer ends on Monday. That is the first day of back to school professional development. And then the students arrive on Wednesday. And then it'll be the mad rush to Thanksgiving break, Christmas break, spring break, and then summer break.
Yep, every break. Just
right?
Map it out. There you go.
I'm not saying that I do this, but I may on every calendar count backwards every day until I get a break. Just saying.
You should.
I know. Our intro music tonight was Please Listen Carefully by Jazar. It's licensed under an attribution and share alike license. Our bump music is The County Fair Rock by John Deku. You can find his music over at soundcloud.com/dirtdogmusic. And our closing music is The Slow Burn by Kevin MacLeod. It's licensed under a Creative Commons Attribution license. In the immortal words of Janice Wright, be a willow. In the storm of life, you'll want to be an oak, but the oaks crack under pressure. It's better to be the willow. Bend, adapt, and change, and go back to form and ride out the storm. For Michelle Wintering and Michael McLeod, I'm Matt Hott saying so long, everybody.
Bye.
This has been an Exceptional Podcast Network production. Speech Science is edited and produced by MWH Production. Please follow Speech Science on Twitter at SpeechSciencePC and like our page on Facebook. For more original podcasts, please visit exceptionaled.com and rate and subscribe to our podcast anywhere you get your podcasts.